It's a special John Lund Unleashed 49ers Camp Report edition. Shout out to Lund loyalists watching on YouTube, those watching on X, Instagram, Facebook, and JohnLundUnleashed.com and the Lund Lunatics listening to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe and like John Lund Unleashed on YouTube and keep those alerts on so you don't miss anything. Now with the latest on the 49ers and the NFL, here's Johnny.
Oh, yeah, hey there. Sorry, I was checking something out. Episode 218, thank you so much for joining us. Got a lot of Niners talk, and I feel bad for Giants fans. They lose again today. What is that, 13 or 14 at home, and there was 35,000 out there? I never blame fans, but what are you doing? If a restaurant serves bad food, do you go? I mean, even if you have tickets, don't go. Stop going. Stop supporting it. It's shit. It's garbage. Bob Melvin needs to go. The organization is embarrassing. They have a $200 million payroll. They're a major market team. The A's are gone out of this market. They're just not doing enough. And great that you got Devers and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to do with the Niners, but it's so pathetic. I don't watch anymore. I'm just reading about it. 13 and 14 at home. And I did see some of the highlights, and Elliot Ramos has got to go. I mean, he's a nice player, but he typifies what has happened with this team. It's a complete joke. So anyway, just wanted to get that off my chest very, very quickly. It is episode 218. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we're late. We had a bunch of stuff to get caught up on today, but I will make it worth your while. A couple of things from Kyle Shanahan yesterday that we're going to get into. The wide receivers being one, and I don't even know if they can start the season given what they have. So we'll get into that conversation. Shanny is setting us up just like Robert Saleh has. I will explain that, especially early in the season. They are trying to warn you. So rather than getting upset like I just did over the Giants, heed the warning. I'll explain what that is. One guy I think they will actually get. Youth is served. I will explain that. We'll go over some drafts, and this kind of tells you why they are where they are and when they hit and what they've done lately. We'll get into that conversation. Can they survive injuries? Kyle was talking about doing camp with the Raiders, which they're already in Vegas. They went from like leaving San Jose where it was like 70 to hitting up on Vegas where it was like 109. I've done that before. It's like, what? And then we'll talk about the Raiders and all sorts of things. NFL Blitz, we'll get into a couple of things there, including team values. Let James cook, and he does get a contract. So McLaurin and Jennings and some of these other guys, and the Cowboys just wrapped up camp in Oxford, and Jerry Jones spoke today, and they still don't have the Parsons deal done. They will. Heed my warning. They just don't want the Eagles to get any kind of publicity, so they're going to keep this Parsons thing up. And Brock Bowers did a smart thing that we need to talk about. And then I love when, and the Caboose Pistol coming up at the end of the show, sweet, clean, family-friendly Caboose Pistol, I love when newscasters have to talk about uncomfortable stories. They're actually better than the stories themselves when we can find the video rather than, I mean, a lot of times just talking about the story is fun, but when we find the video and then the news people have to report said video, it's even better than the story itself. And that is the case in the sweet, clean, family-friendly Caboose Pistol. So good afternoon or good evening to you, I should say, about 7:47 Pacific time. And like I said, we normally do 7 o'clock. Had a bunch of stuff to get done with today, and trying to get a guest on for tomorrow. So we were doing a bunch of stuff so that we can get the view from Vegas tomorrow for the 49ers. And I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't cancel it, to be honest with you. Last year they had a New Orleans joint practice, and they just didn't have enough bodies. And it seems to me that they don't have enough bodies, especially at wide receiver, but they are going to go through with this, and Kyle Shanahan is going to play some starters. And I know he's going to be really, really careful about it because this looks a lot like last year. You got a hold in, you got a bunch of injuries, and as easy as the schedule is, and we'll go through the schedule very quickly to see if they can survive the early part with I don't know what wide receivers outside of Ricky Pearsall. And hopefully he doesn't get hurt because he has been. And it's like you're holding your breath, hoping that the guy who's been hurt the most can stay the most healthy going into the season. So we'll get into all of those things. We're not going to talk about injuries all the friggin' time because we got to talk about other things, but I got some good stuff for you. So anyway, let's hit up on the chat line before I do that and say good evening to everybody. Do remember, you're probably watching on John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. Oh, you say you're not? You could be watching on X, could be watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, any of these other places that we are, Instagram at John Lund Radio, I would love it. We would love it as a community if you would come over here, hang out with us and the people I'm going to say good evening to are on the chat line. So that's over at John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. Please make sure you subscribe. Hit that like button so that the algorithm will like us and we can grow this great community that we have. And put those alerts on so that during the day we can hit you up with other stuff and things. It is positive. It is good. It's not a bunch of spam, and it's high quality information that you're going to need anyway. So please, if you would do that, that would be great. All at John Lund Unleashed. For everything Unleashed, just go to johnlundunleashed.com. Enrique is here. It is great to see you. Baba Booey, Baba Booey. Francis is here. Richie, it's great to see you, my friend. Joy, it is always great. Ozzy Rules is here. So we got a bunch of people jumping in. Everybody saying John Brody's 80th birthday. Is that right? John Brody's 80th birthday. He often gets lost, as we well know. 90th birthday. Sorry. Thank you, Ozzy Rules. He often gets lost in the discussions of great quarterbacks with, obviously, Joe and Steve, but he's right after that group, and everybody forgets about him, and they'll bring up other guys. But John Brody, who I saw, a couple of years ago, he was out at camp. He wasn't doing great, but at least he was moving around a little bit, so that was kind of cool to see him. But yeah, absolutely. John Brody, he often gets lost behind Steve and Joe, but it is great to remind me. So thank you so much for that. I always appreciate it. 90th. Yeah, let me correct myself. 90th for John Brody. So thanks for reminding us of that. All right, let's start at the top. Kyle talking about wide receivers. So let me play this for you. This was yesterday, but I'm going to hold it. I held it for a day because I wanted to play this for you, and then I wanted to discuss the wide receiver position. And as I've said, this is so critical. Before I play Kyle, let me back up for a second. This is so critical because I believe, and Kyle's warning you, and any defensive coach is warning you, and Salah's warning you, and all these different people are warning you in the building. Fred Warner is warning you. Nick Bosa is warning you. With essentially, if I can just surmise this down very quickly in a small term, rookie's going to rookie. So all these guys, maybe 6 to 8 rookies that could be starting, and now we're talking about Marquise Siegel, the really talented and very athletic safety from Kansas State, a 5th rounder. Maybe he's going to start. Linebacker position, I don't think it's going to be Nick Martin. He'll be on the field, I think, on special teams to start. And I think Gifford is going to be the 3rd linebacker. The kid they picked up from Tennessee is more of a special teamer, but it's going to be Fred Warner. It's going to be D. Winters along the defensive line, though. If Mikael Williams gets healthy, yes. DJ Jones, if healthy, yes. I think Valdez might be ahead of Collins, but both those guys are rookies. So there's going to be a lot of them in there. And we continue to get warned time and time and time again on the defensive side. So what does that mean for the offense? Glad you asked. It means that the offense early in the season is going to have to carry the defense. But can the offense carry the defense if there aren't sufficient targets to throw to? And I think that's where the 49ers are at this point to say, what do we got to do here? Because they picked up Malik Turner. So what? Like, I hate that I even have to report that. All this stuff from 49ers, all these tweets and all these different things. Oh, Malik Turner, great. He's a special teams guy, man. These are camp bodies. I'm not going to report to you because it's boring and stupid. Every single Eli Apple and Malik Turner and Bradley Anai and all these are all camp bodies and now going on injured reserve and all this stuff. These guys aren't going to make a difference. They're not moving the needle from a receiver position. So great. They signed certain guys. The only thing that's going to move the needle at this point is A, getting healthy for guys who can actually play the position, or B, making a move, which are getting to the point where they have to. So here's Kyle Shanahan when asked, what's he going to do about the receiver position? Where are they? They're going to pick somebody up. They're going to make a trade. So here's Kyle talking about it. This was yesterday on the receivers, and then we shall discuss.
I mean, it is a challenge. I mean, there's possibilities later. None are guaranteed. But, and there's lots of things that tie to that, who's available, how much they're available for, and the situation our team's in salary cap-wise and stuff and what we can do. But, yeah, we're looking into everything. We'll always try to do the best, but try not to just panic and do something to survive a tough situation at the expense of what would really hurt you later in this year and definitely next year.
And I understand what Kyle's saying there. You don't want to hurt yourself later. You don't want to hurt. But here's the thing. You just signed a bunch of guys. I know that they're far apart on Jennings. I told you this last night, but I'll just reiterate it very, 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 very quickly. I think the Jennings thing is I'm not saying he's faking an injury. He's not faking the calf injury, but if the contract was right, I think we'd see him out on the field. It's now to the point where I think it's a combination of the two, and it's a major problem, and he's got him over a barrel, and he knows it. So that's the Jennings situation. But as far as the receivers are concerned, and I threw this together, I understand what Kyle's saying. You don't want to do anything stupid, but it's kind of like a lot of things in your life. I'll use it. Maybe it's not the best analogy, but you're trying to save money and all these different things, and you don't want to spend money, and you got your finances under control, and all of a sudden you're driving to work one day and your car breaks down. Well, that changes everything because you need your car. So you're like, damn, I wouldn't like to buy a car. I would not like to, whatever. But the reality is this old junker's not getting me around, and I've got to have reliable transportation. Well, the wide receivers for the 49ers, they need to be the reliable transportation of the football for Brock Purdy. So if you look at the receivers right now, let me just throw this on the stage for you, okay? This is what we're dealing with. So there's your wide receiver options. All right, in-house right now, guys that are healthy. Pearsall, Cowing, Gage, Hodgins, Robbie Chosen, Bergen, the young kid out of Montana, and Tyreek Owens, who's not going to make this team. He runs in the 4.7s, 4.8s. It's not going to happen. So for that first week, Pearsall could start. Cowing, I'm still not a huge fan. Gage, I think, would have to start. Maybe even Hodgins, who's a veteran, play with the Giants. Those other guys, Bergen's going to be a practice squad player. Chosen's not making this team. Owens isn't making this team. Jennings is out. Ayuk is out. We know Watkins is out a month. Probably won't be ready in time. And then Demarcus Robinson, even though they're doing an appeal, he's going to probably miss the first two games. Kyle said that again yesterday. So I'm just talking about the first couple of games. Pearsall is the only one, and maybe Gage, that you could say, okay, those are professional level receivers. I just don't know enough about Cowing. No one does. So if anybody has a strong opinion about Cowing based on OTAs and not actual play, I saw him on the actual field last year, and I keep asking this question, and nobody gives me a good answer. How many 5'9", 175-pound wide receivers are overly effective in the NFL? Not very many. Not very many. He's got good speed. He's got some decent quickness, but it's a major problem. All right, so the first name on that trade list is not going to blow your mind in Kendrick Bourne, but you got to remember that they've got to get a professional receiver who probably knows this offense, and New England is not flush with said wide receivers. That's why they would have paid Brandon Ayuk so much money last year. But Bourne may not be a starter with the Patriots this year. He signed a 3-year, $33 million deal, so it's not – this is what Kyle's talking about. He'd really rather not go get Kendrick Bourne and pay him money that he's overpaid for, but there's only 1 year left on his deal. He's a free agent at the end of the year, and he knows the offense. You might have to be that desperate in the car breaking down analogy. You don't want to do it, but right now, out of that group right there, Pearsall, and he's questionable in and of himself. Cowing's questionable. Gage is coming off 2 major injuries. Hodges isn't great. Those last 3 guys aren't going to make the team, and unless they do something with Jennings, which, like I said, I think is as much contract as it is calf injury, they don't want to pay him $20 million. And I've told you this. At first, it looked like they were going to make some sort of a quick deal, kind of like they did last year with McCaffrey or Trent Williams. It's not trending that way. The word that I'm hearing is now that he wants into the high teens or even into the 20s, and it's like they're not going to do that. But they might be desperate enough that they have to, because if you add Jennings to Pearsall and Gage is like a third receiver, and you get through with like 3 or 4 receivers in that first couple of games, okay, that makes a massive difference. Because Ayuk, Watkins, and Robinson aren't going to be that. Now, maybe Watkins could be, but a high ankle sprain's a month. And the kid hasn't played in the league anyway. So let's say, just for the sake of conversation, he was an established receiver like Ayuk and was out a month with a high ankle sprain. He could go right in there because he's done it before. Watkins would be questionable in week 1. I'm not talking about it from an injury standpoint just because he's never done it before, other than a nice 50-yard preseason catch. So to ask him, even if he was to be healthy by the Seattle game, which is less than a month away, and then jump in there with hardly any practice time, it's just not realistic. So they're getting to the point now where Bourne knows the offense. That makes sense. And then those other names, I don't love any of them. But these are scraps that we're dealing with right now. So I looked around the league. Juju Smith-Schuster's a guy that's had success in this league. He's not a starter right now for Kansas City. Quentin Johnson's a kid out of TCU, a former first-round pick, has been terrible. He's not even listed as a starter with the Chargers. Adam Thielen is the guy I'd go get right now. Carolina's not going anywhere. I get it that you need a veteran for Bryce Young. You drafted a kid in McMillan in the first round, 8th overall, did Carolina. Whatever Adam Thielen wants, that's what I need. I want a professional wide receiver. Now, if you told me that it was going to be Pearsall, Jennings, and Thielen in the former Viking in the first game, I could live with that. He could pick up this offense rather quickly. I don't know that Carolina is going to trade him, but if you're Carolina, and like Kyle said, I don't want to give up a pick, but you know what? You're so desperate at this point. Adam Thielen for a, I don't know, 5th-round pick. If you're Carolina, you're not going anywhere anyway, even in that bad division. That's the guy I would try to pick up. And then other guys have just either been on the team or guys who haven't been very good based on their draft position. Sky Moore of Kansas City is a former 2nd-round pick. He's not starting. Jalen Hyatt's a big, fast, height, weight, speed guy. Came out of Tennessee. Supposed to be really good. He was a 3rd-round pick of the Giants. Hasn't done jack squat. So that would be a guy. I mean, again, not based on what he's done, but based on big, fast, Tennessee wide receiver, 3rd-rounder. I don't know, take a chance. Terrence Marshall was on the practice squad with the Niners last year. He's in Philadelphia. That's a guy, again, that would know the offense, but I wouldn't feel overly productive. But again, an LSU guy, played in the SEC. So is it a great list? No. But Bourne would be the guy right off the top of my head because he played here, knows Kyle's offense, knows the expectations, knows you got to block, blah, blah, blah. I think he would be probably the tops on their list right now. Bring a guy back that you know. And we're talking about trades and free agents and things like that. A lot of times you just have to connect the dots. Am I a Kendrick Bourne guy, especially for the money that he's going to make in the last year of his deal? Not really. But desperate times, desperate situations call for desperate measures, and that's kind of where the 49ers are. And continuing to pick up guys like St. Brown or Malik Turner, that's not going to do anything for this team. There is no one out there that is the great elixir. There's just not. And then free agent-wise, everyone wants to talk about Gabe Davis, Tyler Boyd's out there, Allen Robinson, guys like that, Aguilar. If those guys had any juice left, they would have been signed. And, Gabe Davis is not asking for much, but there's got to be something there. Boyd's had an okay career. Robinson kind of bounced around after being solid early in his career. I don't know what's going on with those guys, but teams had to have checked him out. And then I'm sure the Niners have called Amari Cooper just to say, hey, man, are you sure? Because we've heard retirement things on him. And I've told you about Amari Cooper before. I did the first interview he ever did as an NFL player when he was with the Raiders, and I was doing pre-half and post for the Raiders. And he just never gave me the impression, and maybe part of it that he's quiet. But again, this is a guy that played at Alabama, was a top 5 pick in the draft. At some point he had to have some passion for the game. I just don't think he has passion for the game anymore. It just doesn't seem like he has passion for the game. Now, would the Niners say, and maybe it's for the money. It's like, God, I'm set for life. Would I come out of retirement for a couple of $2-3 million? I mean, you and I would. We'd jump at the chance. But I don't know. I don't think Amari Cooper wants to play anymore. He would be an obvious guy. I didn't put him on the list because I've heard he's going to retire. So would he save things? I mean, again, we're just talking about the first couple weeks. Because once Robinson comes back, and if you add Robinson to Pearsall, okay, and Jennings, if by week 3 it was Robinson, Jennings, and Pearsall, I could live with that. Then whatever happens from there. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And the reason why I wanted to pop the schedule up, so there you go. It's not pretty. That's not a pretty graphic right there. But let me pop this up, all right? And again, it's a bad schedule, which is good for the 49ers, not if you have season tickets. But you're at Seattle week 1. That's a pretty good defense. And if you don't have receivers in that game and they can just say, okay, we'll double George Kittle and we'll put everybody up on the line, Seattle's probably going to slow that offense down. And all of a sudden your defense, which again, I'm going to tell you more in just a second, but they're constantly warning you, youth, we're not going to be good, very, very good defensively early. So with no receivers, that Seattle game all of a sudden becomes very tough. And going to Seattle anytime is not easy. You play New Orleans after that. Again, you go on the road. New Orleans isn't supposed to be that great. Their quarterback situation, along with Cleveland, is one of the worst in the league because they got 3 guys, which basically are all non-starters. They got a rookie. They got a couple other guys. Derek Carr's gone. It's not a great situation for Kellen Moore with the quarterbacks. They're going to try to probably get one next year. I know that they drafted a kid, relatively early, but I don't see it. So it's not a great situation for the Saints, but same kind of a thing. These are 2 games right out of the gate. One's a divisional game. One is a team you should beat in the Saints, but you're going on the road. It's a long distance thing, and you're not going to have Robinson. So those first 2 all of a sudden are like, oh, damn. Then Robinson comes back and you get the Cardinals and then the Jags stink. And then you better have a lot of guys back by that Rams game. That becomes a huge game because of the Niners schedule and because of the Rams, the Niners, that kind of thing. They're expected to be the top 2 teams in the division, although I wouldn't sleep on Seattle. And then you go to Tampa, and by that point, you hope to have Brandon Ayuk back. So I'm just looking at the first 4 to 6 because then it's Ayuk. Jennings, there's going to be some sort of a thing there. And Ricky Pearsall, we're cautiously optimistic that he can be there. So I'm just looking at the first handful of games there through the Bucs game, the 6, because Kyle's saying something about Ayuk. So the receivers are problematic through the first 6. And by the way, and this is the mistake we always make. Let me throw that off the board. This is the mistake we always make as NFL fans because injuries are so prevalent, is that we go, well, then by that point, we'll all be healthy. Who's to say Ricky doesn't get hurt? Who's to say Robinson doesn't get hurt? Who's to say that Watkins is back? Who's to say, it's just, there's a lot there. And I've been saying this the entire offseason. I think it's going to be a big Brock Purdy bounce back here, but not if they have a wide receiver core like this. Because, Christian McCaffrey can get open out of the backfield. George Kittle's a really nice tight end. They have tried for years and years and years to try to get another pass-catching tight end, a second tight end, and they haven't been able to do it, which is one of those things that I think is absolutely critical. I have not seen it. I have not seen it in camp. They bring back Ross Dwelly. They spend a bunch of money basically from Jacksonville on a blocking tight end, and I haven't seen him catch a lot of passes. So they're going to be stuck at least the first couple of days, and I think it's up to the 49ers now to start seriously combing the market. And like I said, Kendrick Bourne is a guy that they know. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if that was part of the situation where they said, okay. And he's not cheap. It's not a great contract, but he is in the last year of the deal. So I could see them looking at that because it's not only got to be somebody that's an upgrade to what they have right now, but it's got to be somebody who can learn the offense, learn the culture, learn the expectations quickly for what the 49ers want. Just because Kyle Shanahan's desperate for a player, a quality player, at least a passable player to play wide receiver, doesn't mean he's going to drop his expectations at the position. And Bourne knows what that's all about. Now, again, I'm not saying Kendrick Bourne is great, but if you're saying it's week 1 and it's Jennings, Pearsall, and I don't even know if it's going to be Jennings, and you can add Bourne, I can live with that. But if it has to be Gage, I don't know about Cowing. I don't know if he's going to be healthy enough. He's not proven. I don't think Watkins is going to be back. This is a major problem that they're going to have to address before week 1. So that's what's going on as far as the wide receivers are concerned. And Kyle talked about the receivers and flat out just said, and Matt Barrows was the one to ask the question, just flat out said, we got a problem at wide receiver. So there's that. All right, let me play the second thing, the Raiders practice I have. Let me play this. So this is from Sirius Satellite Radio, and this is the NFL channel. And Kyle was on, I believe, with Pat Kerwin and Jim Miller, and was talking about expectations for the season for the 49ers. And let me just, again, I will warn you, Saleh has said it, Kasarik has said it, a bunch of people have said it, the youth of the 49ers. And Kyle tries to spin it in a way that's like, hey, this is positive. This is a good thing. But he's also giving you warnings, especially defensively, that things could start slowly. Take a listen.
Bunch of youth. We need to get guys who are younger, so obviously we can afford to keep some of these players, also having to pay a quarterback and things like that. So whenever that happens, you do depend on young guys. But when you get young guys, it also makes it a little bit more built to last. And we're kind of in the in-between in those areas, because when you got guys like Christian, guys like Trent, Bosa, Fred, there's a number of them. It's hard to kind of say that you're rebuilding because you got guys there who can carry you. But in the NFL, it doesn't matter how good those stars are. You got to have the right type of team. And we know we got some young guys that haven't done it yet. But that's what's so big about this year. It's what's so big about camp is we're finding out a lot about these guys every day. And it'll be interesting who ends up being a part of our 53, which to me is more open now than it's been in about 6 years. But even on day 1, that's not going to be it. Like week 1, I expect our team in week 12, week 13 to look a lot different than it did in week 1. And my whole goal is that we get better throughout the year and find a way to hopefully get into those playoffs. And once you get into those playoffs, then you got a chance at anything.
All right. So look, I agree with everything he's saying. But what is happening through training camp is there's constant discussion of we're going to get better, we're going to get better, we're going to get better. And they're not talking about it offensively because they'll get their receivers back. They've got McCaffrey. They've got Kittle. They've got Trent Williams. Those are top. They got Kyle Juszczyk. They've got Brock Purdy. Those are top end players in this league, and they're going to eventually score points when they get the receivers right. Let me just go back to the schedule very quickly again for expectations. All right, early in the season, receivers, that's going to be a problem. But he said by week 12, we hope to be really good, and then we'll see from there. Okay, so let's work backwards. That's 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. So if they're in it right here, let's just go back even here to Carolina because they stink. So Kyle is always a December coach, but we'll start it early because Carolina stinks. Let's just have fun. Win. Cleveland's a mess. Win. Bye. Tennessee stinks. 3. Yeah, their quarterback situation's horrible. 4. Bears, I think, are overrated. I'm not a Caleb Williams guy. And then you get Seattle, but you get them at home. So they could really go on a streak at the end. And I think that's why Kyle's saying it. But can you survive this right here? And again, it's not great teams, but you could flash a little bit in here. Seattle's not going to be easy. The Cardinals aren't going to be easy. The Rams aren't going to be easy. The Bucs aren't going to be easy. I don't know what to expect out of Atlanta with Penix at the helm. Texans aren't going to be easy. Giants probably stink. And by November 2nd, Russell Wilson will have given away to Jackson Dart at quarterback. We had talked about the Rams and the Cardinals. So really, it gets to the point where can you be just above 500 at this point, November 16th, and then the stinkiness at the end of the schedule. And the only reason it's bad is because you may have season tickets. You're like, man, Carolina, really? Tennessee is on my list, etc. Bears, not bad. But they've got to dominate, as Kyle often does, in December. And he's warning you of that it's going to take a minute. So hopefully at that point, the receivers are back. They're healthy enough. And then the defense and Robert Saleh, who continues to tell you day after day after day, youth will be served, but it's going to take a minute on the defensive side of the ball. That's just the deal. So I started thinking about this today, right? As Kyle talked about youth, as I've heard Saleh talk about youth, as they're warning you, even though you won't heed the warning early in the season, when they suck and make mistakes defensively, you're going to get pissed. And I get it. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. Fred Warner is warning you about it. Fred, I think, was actually the author of Rookie's Gonna Rook. Rookie's Gonna Rook. That's just what they do. So let me just show you something real quick because I was just having some fun with this today. Because you remember last week when Robert Saleh said, if you're hitting 50% of your draft picks, you're doing a really good job. Well, the guys that when John and Kyle took over in their first draft was 2017, they went 9 for 26 in the draft for 33%. But look who they got. Bosa, Debo, Wisnowski, Greenlaw, right? And there's some other guys in there, but McGlinchey was solid. Warner's going to the Hall of Fame. DJ Reed, actually a really good player in this league. Kittle, DJ Jones. The rest of those guys, I mean, there's a couple of guys in there. There's some real big misses in here. Street was okay for a couple of years, whatever. But, I mean, those are really good drafts. Think about this. Bosa could be on a Hall of Fame track. Dre Greenlaw's really, really good. Fred Warner's on a Hall of Fame track. George Kittle's on a Hall of Fame track. I mean, every year you might have grabbed a Hall of Famer in Bosa, Warner, and Kittle. So, I mean, there was a lot of key guys there that got them to a couple of Super Bowls right there, and they went 9 for 26. Let's think about this. There's a reason why I'm doing this. All right, so then let's look at what they've done the last couple of years because you got to hit on these guys big time. All right, so then you look at these kind of guys and what they did, and this is this year's draft. I think Mikael Williams is going to hit. I think Upton Stout's going to hit. I think C.J. West is going to hit. I think Siegel late is going to hit on this whole thing. So actually this year's draft looks solid. And then there's some other guys in there. I don't know what Collins is going to do, but I put red marks by guys that I'm not saying they're not going to be good, but that's what I'm seeing. And then you look the year before, Pierce I think is going to hit. Pooney looked really, really good. There's a few guys on there. And then, and this is why it's ugly right now. Year before that, D. Winter's really the only guy who I think is going to hit. I know Moody's still on the team, but I'm not a big Jair Brown fan. And then the year before that, and again, remember, we're also taking out all the Trey Lance picks, so you didn't have first rounders. And then you get Brock Purdy at the bottom. That makes that entire draft. But for 2 drafts, these are the guys that are supposed to be the backbone of your team right now, and it's why Kyle Shanahan just said, well, we got a lot of youth on this team, because when you miss picks and you got to go out in free agency, and that's really expensive, the lifeblood of your team, which right now should be guys who are, 23, 24, 25, 26 years old, you got Brock Purdy. you got winners. You got a few guys here that have a lot of potential, and I like some of the guys on this draft. But the thing that is missing that you saw in the previous drafts, we pop this up again, you don't have that high-end guy. Kittle high-end, Warner high-end, Bosa high-end, Debo high-end, Dre Greenlaw high-end. Like, you're hitting, but you're also hitting with some guys who are a few of those guys who might go to the Hall of Fame. So you hit 33%, and you got a bunch of stars. And then right now, this is over projection by me. And I think I'm being generous here. You're hitting about 31% for the last few drafts. And so for everybody saying, how many, all these picks that they got to hit, and everybody's talking about the youth and all this kind of stuff, here's the reality of it. First round picks are 50-50. First round picks are 50-50. And then it goes down from there. So when Robert Saleh said about a week ago, hey, if you're hitting 50%, you're doing awesome. The reality of it is it's kind of like a really good batting average. If you were able to hit in the 300s, which is 30-something%, you're actually doing a really good job. And it's the quality of player you get. So what happened is in the 22 draft where you got Brock and only Brock, and in the 23 draft where it looks like D Winners is taking a step forward, and Winners is this year what Martin needs to be, Nick Martin needs to be next year. Martin's getting to the ball, but he's like panicked when he gets there. That's what D Winners was a year ago. So it's really hard to hit draft picks is the point. And this year, I like a lot of these young guys, but here's the reality of it. I think Mikael Williams is going to hit. I think Upton Stout's going to hit. I think Watkins has a chance to hit. From what I've seen, and look, it's too early to say this, but I think Collins is going to be a run plugger. I don't know that he's going to be more than that, but that's okay. That's no big deal. Some of these other guys, Siegel might be a guy, but I need to see more. He came up in a preseason game and had some nice tackles, but they're going to challenge him, like I said, to go backwards. I'm not really sure on that. But the point in saying all of this and bringing all this up is there's a lot of discussion about youth and all these guys needing to come through. And the 24 draft a year ago and the 25 draft this year a lot of these guys, they need like 50 to 60% of these guys to hit, and it's just not realistic. And especially their first year in the league. First year, and let's use the best examples of the best players that the 49ers have gotten, like I said, over that first group. Kittle was good, not great his first year. His real breakout game, remember, was that Thursday night against the Raiders? Fred Warner wore 48 for a while as a rookie. He was good, really good for a rookie. You have to put that caveat on him. His first year was good for a rookie. Nick Bosa was great right away, but he was the second overall pick of the draft. So generally speaking, your first year, you're good. And then if you make that jump, that'd be great. So even these guys in 25, and you can see it from Mikael Williams, it's going to take him a minute. He's inexperienced. Collins, it's going to take him a minute. Stout, it doesn't look like it's too big for him, so I think he's going to be good right out of the gate. Watkins just got set back by an injury. Nick Martin, I think Nick Martin will be an okay special teams player this year, but I really don't expect him to do really a ton. I think he could be a D Winners next year, but it's going too fast for Nick Martin, and you can just see it. Now, maybe by midseason, this is what Kyle's talking about. He said by week 12. Okay, but remember, there's going to be injuries too. So let's just say, and let's knock on over the wood here, that D Winners does get hurt at some point, and they go, okay, Nick, it's your time. You better hope that injury is like week 8 or something like that and not week 2 or 3. And this is what's scaring me about these early injuries, because as a fan base, when we're talking about different injuries or different sports, in baseball, you can say, okay, when that guy comes back, because everybody else will stay relatively healthy. Or in basketball, you'll say when this guy comes back, but the rest of the team can be relatively healthy. In football, it's just like it's just a revolving door. Who's hurt from week to week? Okay, that guy came back, but this guy's out. That guy came back, and now this guy's out. Blah, 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 blah. It just goes back and forth. You don't get overall health. You get what's called NFL health. If they get relative NFL health, because we've talked about how top-heavy they are, so all of a sudden now you're dealing with receivers early. The cornerback spot is tough. The D-line, then you rely on all these rookies. I said this about the Giants at the beginning of the season. I was looking at their entire roster, and I said, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And the more what ifs you have, the less your chances are of being great. And I'm starting to look at the 49ers, and they've got an easy schedule, and I still think that they're going to win a lot of games. And I think Brock's going to bounce back, and they have a lot of leadership, especially in the offensive side. I think that special teams is going to be a lot better. How can it not be? You got to rely on Jake Moody, because the reality that people forget is most of the games in this league are 6 points or less. 75% of the games in the NFL are 6 points or less. That means that your special teams are really important. It means your kicker better hit the kicks. By the way, yesterday he had his best session kicking. Not only was he 6 or 6 or 7 for 7, whatever it was, but they were more majestic kicks that you want to see. So all these little things we're starting to do what I remember we were doing a lot with the Giants at the beginning of the season, which I was talking about what if first base and what if second base and what if Ramos and what if this and what if that. And for a while they were coming through and we're like, hey, the what ifs are coming through. And we're starting to get that with the 49ers. What if they can figure out the wide receivers? What if they can figure out backup corners? What if a lot of these rookies come through? There's a lot of that what if factor. And most times what ifs are like 30-70 against. So a few of these rookies are going to come through, a few are not. But they are warning us that the defense is going to be a little slow. I mean, we're getting it from everywhere. So that's just something that I'm just kind of giving you a little bit ahead of time. There is a lot of what ifs on this roster. All right, as far as, by the way, hit me up. Give me your thoughts, questions, comments, thoughts on any of that. Let me flip over to the Raiders really quickly and get into that conversation about the Raiders and the Niners, and just real quick, and then I'll play something from Kyle for you. But here's the flip card, the official flip card of the game on Saturday. And it looks like we're going to see Brock Purdy and we're going to see McCaffrey, maybe a couple of series just to get him warmed up. Because remember, no 4 games, 3 games. So we'll probably see him for a couple of series in both these games, although I am kind of surprised they're doing the joints because, like I said, last year they canceled the one with the Saints, and they're more banged up than they were last year. But as you can see right there, you know, the Raiders, the guys to watch on the Raiders, Geno Smith is there. Pete Carroll is there. Brock Bowers is there. The things that I would be concerned about, and we'll get a full report. And like I said, we'll have somebody on from Vegas to give us a full report from the joint practices on tomorrow night's show. But if they don't dominate the Raiders' offensive line, as you can see there, it's not a great offensive line that the Raiders are going to put out there. Seattle absolutely tore them up. I'm interested to see Ashton Genty. It's interesting that Pete Carroll, I guess I don't hate him as much because he's not a Seahawk, but he's still chewing the gum, wearing the Air Monarchs and doing all the stuff he does. I saw him tackle John Gruden's son, Deuce, who's still a member of the coaching staff there. I mean, the guy is he's Pete Carroll. But they should be able to take advantage of the Raiders' offensive line, both in practice tomorrow and on Saturday. If that doesn't happen for this young defensive line, I would have some concerns. Like I said, I'm interested. Can you Ashton Genty had 3 carries for -1 yard. If he runs a little bit wild on the 49ers early, I would be concerned about that. Covering Brock Bowers, let's see. Is D. Winters that good? I want to see him against Brock Bowers. And Genty can come out of the backfield. They have this guy, and everyone was giving me grief about it. Dante Thornton, he's a big dude. Like 6'3", 220, runs a 4.3 flat out of Tennessee. And in the draft process, I was like, that's a guy I'd like to see the Niners take a flyer on. But the Raiders took him pretty early. And he wears number 10, and he's been a big story in camp for the Raiders. And then Max Crosby is going to fight somebody. Who's he going to fight? Like, I could see a Colt McKivitz Max Crosby thing happen. I don't want it to be Trent Williams. I don't want to get into that stuff. But I could see and Max Crosby's not that stupid. I could see like a McKivitz Crosby kind of a thing. I think that could happen. And then in the Seattle game too, I was not overly impressed by the Raiders corners. They have this kid Porter who's about 6'2", and I want to see some of the receivers up against this kid. He's a 2nd-round pick out of Iowa State. So that's a guy that I think is going to be an interesting matchup for the Raiders versus the Niners and the receivers. It's not like last week where they had Patrick Surtain or somebody like that. They don't have that kind of talent defensively, the Raiders. So look, they should have some success. If the offensive line performs, there's another thing to watch for tomorrow. If the offensive line performs as poorly as they did in the practices against the Broncos have a good defense, one of the better defenses in the league, maybe a top 5 defense, a really good defensive line. So that didn't surprise me that Brock was under so much pressure. If the Raiders do that same thing to this offensive line, that's going to be concerning, both Thursday and Saturday. So like I said, we'll get a full report on camp tomorrow, and then the game is 1:00 on Saturday. Here is Kyle Shanahan talking about matching up the Raiders tomorrow in joint practices.
Clear. We've done our coordinators. We've got all the practice schedules, but Pete and I will talk probably the next couple of days.
in a similar situation to you? I mean, because you guys are going to go with a lot of guys that aren't going to be able to practice, it looks like. Is it, you can still get good practices out of that, you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a similar situation as we were last year, where it gets tough to do these at this time. But I also feel our team is in a different situation in just terms of guys that need this. And we got a lot more young guys, a lot of more new guys. So I really do want to get a practice for someone else, but we'll see how these next couple of days go, whether we even can do threes. We couldn't do threes today, couldn't do one-on-ones today, things like that. So we've had to cut things out. Hopefully we won't have to cut too many things out versus Vegas, but we'll see after the next practice.
So again, Kyle brings up an interesting point about youth. And what he means by that is one of the reasons why they canceled the Saints practices, joint practices a year ago, and it was the first preseason game, and they played, but they didn't joint practice against each other, was that they had so many injuries. But also, as he just points out, they had a bunch of veterans. Offensively, the same kind of a thing, but defensively, remember, add Debo on offense, add Dre Greenlaw, add Hufanga, add, all these different guys. And he's like, look, we know what we're doing. The difference this year, again, goes back to youth. CJ West, Collins, Valdez, Winters, Martin, that secondary, especially without Renardo Green, who was supposed to come back this week for the Raiders, and I'm starting to get a little bit nervous about. He's supposed to be the starter. They need the work. These young corners need the work. Marcus Siegel in the secondary needs the work. They need to figure out their safeties. There's a lot of open positions on the defensive side of the ball. There's, I think, an open position because Ben Barch is down again at left guard. Along the offensive line, there's no other positions other than that. But again, getting these young receivers some reps so that Kyle Shannon and the rest of this team can say, are we going to have enough? Do we got to go out and give up draft pick compensation next year or something like that? How desperate are we? Like I told you, I think it goes without saying that they're desperate because Pearsall's going to be out there running around, Robinson, but just for the preseason. They don't have a lot there. And so they're going to just pick and choose offensively, but defensively especially, they need work against the Raiders. And this is an interesting one, like I said, because Geno Smith is very familiar with the 49ers and what Robert Saleh and this defense is going to do. Brock Bowers is a tough cover. Ashton Genty, a couple of these fast, speedy receivers who aren't as established, but they've got those. So there's some veterans on this offense, and I think they want to see defensively against a different team with a different scheme, even though we know what Pete Carroll wants to do. Pete wants to run the football. Chip Kelly is their offensive coordinator, which is kind of funny. But they want to get some work, especially on the defensive side. Do they need as much work against the Raiders' defense? Not so much. And especially as I played you last night, Max Crosby says he has a 100% fight rate in joint practices. I'm sure that Kyle Shanahan's like, please no. Like, Kyle Shanahan hates that. That's why they didn't do two practices against Denver. He's like, one's good. You see nowadays, teams are only doing one joint practice because the second joint practice just turns into a melee. People are pissed off. It's hot and all those kind of things. So they do just one. And he's going to balance getting hurt and trying to keep this thing, under control, but also just, I got to get especially my young players, I got to get the work in. Because a year ago, we had more of a veteran team. This year, it's like every minute of work they can get, they're going to try to get. But they've got to be careful not to get injured because, and I don't want to say this, but I have to. If like a guy like Pearsall gets hurt, I don't know what they're going to do. And so they've got to balance that between, I got to get Pearsall some work here because he was injured so much his rookie year, and he's rookie-ish still, even though the last couple of games of the year he was really, really good, but he's still rookie-ish. So they want to get him some work against a different team, a different defense, a different offense. They want to see different things. And then they'll play their starters a little bit because it's week 2. But again, because of all the injuries, he's going to be like, we got to be a little careful. So that's what we expect to see. And again, tomorrow we'll do a full recap of practice in Vegas, and we'll get somebody down there to give us an update on what's going on as far as what happened at the practices. So there you go. Episode 218, as far as the Niners are concerned, I gave you the information on Kyle and the receivers, a name to watch, Kendrick Bourne. Shanny setting us up just like Robert Saleh. That defense is going to be a minute. He said we're going to be far different in week 1 than we were in week 12. Youth served, we talked about. Hitting on the draft, we talked about. Can they survive injuries, we've talked about. And then we just gave you a little bit on the Raiders on Thursday. So before we get out to the NFL Blitz and a sweet, clean, family-friendly Caboose pistol, any questions, comments, or thoughts on Raiders, Niners, injuries, anything we've gone over? Did I shortchange somebody as far as, again, I said the draft and who I think might hit from this group? And again, I'm speculating on the guys this year. I'm obviously speculating a lot, like Malik Mustafa, for example. I like Malik Mustafa. I don't know how he's going to come back. And then, like I said, one of the reasons that youth is going to be served right now, look at 22, only Brock Purdy. Look at 23, to me, only D Winners. I mean, when you have 2 drafts and as good as Purdy is, and you hit on 2 guys, that ain't good. And one of the reasons you did is obviously as you look at those drafts, you didn't have first-round picks. 22, your top pick's Drake Jackson in the second round. 23, same kind of a thing. You took Trey and you lost 2 first-round picks. It's a killer. But between that and then missing on all those other picks, you wonder why are the Niners having to have so many young players? Because they missed on those drafts. Brock Purdy saved him, so he might be worth that entire draft, but it's a problem. So that's why they are where they are, and that's why it's constant discussion, and that's why they don't want to continue to give away picks because they have the last couple of years. And oh, by the way, they took a kicker in the 3rd round too. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to get angry about it. So again, thoughts, questions, comments on anything Niners right now. And again, a full recap tomorrow on the show with someone from Vegas. I'll let you know when I know. By the way, I did not mention this. Any questions, comments, thoughts that you want 100% on the board? All you got to do is donate to the show in a super or such. That's what Ben Affleck's double chin is doing. By the way, I haven't seen you in a while, but I do appreciate the pumpkin. It is very nice. Dudes deserved release. I'm not sure what we're talking about on that one. Oh, I see. You're talking about Christian Wilkinson. Yeah, you're talking about the Raiders defensive tackle. Yeah, that's a whole weird thing. Now, having said that, given because right when he got released, everybody was, oh my God, should they pick him up? Oh my God, should they pick him up? Believe me, given the youth that the Niners have on the defensive line, and it's nothing against CJ West or Valdez or Collins or any of these kind of guys, they're going to be players in time. But if Wilkins had been healthy, that's a guy that the Niners would have looked into, whether he was grabbing whatever he was grabbing. Just saying, man. Just saying. I agree with Kenny, especially for the Niners. It's probably going to be extended training camp for some of these guys. And that's why I brought the schedule up. That's why I popped this up here, because I'm like, okay, how are they going to survive with youth on defense needing to get improved and Saleh and everybody else and Kyle, anybody under the sun's going, it's going to be a minute for the defense. Just warning you. Not that we're going to heed that warning. We're still going to bitch and moan. But now having the wide receivers where, as I've said, they have got to be a 30-point scoring team against Seattle, the Saints, the Cardinals, maybe not the Jags. They generally stink. Certainly against the Rams, maybe against the Bucks. I mean, that first 6 weeks before the defense can get their feet under them, you're going to have to average like 30 points a game to be, I don't know, in the first 6 games, 4-2? Something like that? Can they go 4-2 in those games with the way that the receiver room is right now? Winning at Seattle is going to be tough. New Orleans going across the country is tougher than you think. Arizona is always kind of a pain in the ass, but that's the home opener. The one that Jacksonville stinks. The Rams is going to be a challenge, although that's going to be Levi's South, but that's going to be a challenge. By the way, Matthew Stafford is still not practicing. Not that we need to get to the NFL wire early, but Matthew Stafford is still not practicing, everybody. Just letting you know. And then going to Tampa, they're better than you think. So, yeah, 4-2 would be a monumental start given the injuries so far. So, there you go. 2-2 in September, says Kenny. Let me check that out. Seattle's going to be tough. Let's be honest. Going across the country against New Orleans, but I'll give them the win. Their quarterback situation stinks. Win the home opener against the Saints, beat Jags. So there's 3. Rams is going to be tough. So, I mean, you could be 3-3. Lose at Seattle, lose at the Rams, lose at the Bucks, and beat the Saints, Cardinals, and Jags, and you're 3-3 at that point. I might take that, given all the injuries early to the wide receivers. And then, like I said, then you go to November 24th, and Kyle wins in December. The Panthers stink. The Browns stink. You win the bye. Tennessee stinks. The Colts, along with the Browns and Saints, have a terrible quarterback situation between Richardson and Daniel Jones. I think the Bears are overrated, but I could be wrong. So I think they're gonna finish strong. And Kyle kind of intimated that, like I said, in the Sirius Satellite interview that I played a little bit earlier. Look, I don't like to proclaim a loss to Seattle, but they've got a good defense, and that's going to be a tough game. That's going to be a tough game, and playing there is not that fun, especially with them pumping noise in there. That's right, I just said it. Yeah, there you go, Pete Carroll. So anyway, there you go. There is the story on the 49ers. Those picks got to hit the wide receivers. That's an ugly situation right now. Gave you a little bit of a flip card. And again, tomorrow we'll have a full report from Vegas. Anything else on questions, comments, thoughts on the Niners before we hit up a little bit of, let's do it. Let's hit up a little bit of NFL Blitz, or what I like to call the NFL Wire. I put the Blitz down there, but it's actually the Wire. And I do have fancy music, which I know everybody likes.
It's time for a look at the NFL stories making headlines. It's the NFL Wire on John Lund Unleashed.
All right, let me pop that up there first. I know that everybody bitches and moans about Jerry Jones and not getting Micah Parsons done and all that kind of stuff, but look, $12.8 billion doesn't lie. And I don't know if you saw what he said the other day, where he basically admitted that he would rather have publicity than win when it comes to the Micah Parsons thing. They wrapped up training camp, did the Cowboys in Oxnard, and they do that just for advertisers and all that kind of stuff. They make money during training camp like nobody in the NFL does. So they are the most valuable team. The Rams in their new house, third. Giants, that's New York, the biggest market in the country. I get it. The Patriots, I think they'll slowly go down the less they win. They're still riding off the golden years. And then there's your San Francisco 49ers at $8.6 billion. So don't be crying to us about how poor you are, all right? We don't want to hear it. And all these people are like, oh, they had to sell a percentage of the team. These values on these teams are not going down. I'll just tell you that. By the way, the Raiders are 6th on that list. And what's funny about it is I'm in the midst of writing a piece on Tom Brady in his second year. And I don't know if you saw his interview with Joel Klatt, and I'll play some of that tomorrow for you in the NFL Wire. But he was talking about broadcasting in year 2 and the things he wants to get better on. And part of the premise of the piece that I'm writing, and it's a national piece, a media piece that I'm writing that will be out on Friday, is that, everyone's saying that Brady won't walk away from his his $375 million Fox deal. Do you know what the recent valuation of the Raiders, what 5%, or what Brady owns, 5% of the Raiders is worth right now? It's worth anywhere from $335 to $395 million. So when people say Brady won't walk away from a $375 million contract, well, his 5% of the Raiders, for not being in front of a microphone and not being the best and having people criticize him and all those kind of things, is probably worth less than 5% of the Raiders. And then Mark Davis has so much respect for Brady that even with 5% of the Raiders, he'd probably let him run the joint, And he's got, remember, the former general manager, assistant general manager for the Bucs, John Spytek, he's running the Raiders. You don't think he listens to Brady? So anyway, you could run the Raiders and have 5% of the team and have, I don't know, that thing's going to be worth, it's just going to keep going up. It's going to be worth more than his contract with Fox in about a year. So that's something to keep an eye on. But anyway, I got a piece that is coming out on Friday that I'll let you check out as well. So again, don't cry for the 49ers and they say, oh, we've got to cut guys. We can't afford it. And then $8.6 billion. $8.6 billion is what they're worth. Number 2 on the list as far as the NFL Wire is concerned. Oh, long national nightmare is over. James Cook. That's actually a cool picture. James Cook has been extended. Remember, he was holding on with the Bills and they get the deal done. And I'll make a not so bold prediction. This is just the first of many. Terry McLaurin will get done with Washington. Because I've told you this over and over again, Micah Parsons will get done with the Cowboys because Jerry's going to take that up into the last minute. Remember, the Thursday night opener is going to be Cowboys in Philly. And and Jerry wants nothing to do with all the national pundits talking about the Eagles for hours and hours and hours and how great they are right before the game. And so he's going to take the Micah Parsons thing up probably maybe a couple of days before the whole thing happens. Micah Parsons was at the final Cowboys training camp practice in California today. Did not participate, of course, but that's going to get done. And then the one that's closest to us is hopefully the Jauan Jennings gets done sooner rather than later, because all of this nervousness and things like that can be, I'm not going to say totally put away, but if it's Jauan Jennings as the pseudo number one receiver week 1 at Seattle and Ricky Pearsall is the 2, and even if it had to be Russell Gage or Jacob Cowing or whatever, I could live with that. Jennings, I think, is the entire key to the receiver position until Ayuk gets back. So James Cook gets his deal done. I expect these other deals to get done, and it's just blah, 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 talk, talk, talk. It's great stuff for the talking head shows, but nobody's getting traded, I don't think. So that's that. And then finally, and this is as much of a question as anything else, of when you make the decision to just let the hair go. Because Brock Bowers, as good as he is, and he's not the number one tight end in the league. He might be fantasy-wise, but if you add in blocking, it's Kittle, and it's not even close. But give Bowers his credit and give the Raiders credit for making a nice move to get Brock Bowers. And I'm excited to see the Niners against Bowers. And if D. Winters is really that good and Fred Warner is going to love to take on this guy, and, let's see Nick Martin and his speed take on this guy, just pure pass catcher. This guy's awesome. Napa, by the way. But Brock Bowers did the right thing. On the left, he's a rookie. I mean, that's too bad. I mean, look, I'm having a bad hair life too, but 22 years old to have that kind of lettuce on the top of your head, and then he went, hell with it. I'm just done with it. He went Jordan on the right as year number 2, as they said, and that was a good move on his part. I mean, it's got to be hard to part with your hair at the age of, 23 now? But he looks a lot better. That first year, that was like he actually tried to comb his hair. Hey, Brock, it's picture day today. Okay, I'm going to make my hair look decent. And that was as good as he could do. So it's time. And so he went with that look. It's a much better look for him. And then that way, it's just like, it's over. It's kind of like, remember Derek White of the Celtics, and his hairline just kept going back and back and back. It was like, dude. Or Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso had the worst hair. And it was like, dude. And Alex Caruso just got married like 2 weeks ago. His wife is beautiful. And I'm sure she met him after the hair was gone. It's like, dude, come on. You got to do it. So anyway, Brock Bowers looks much better. Sans hair. So there is what he's going to look like in the second year. So there you go. There's your NFL wire values. $8.6 billion. James Cook, I think, is going to be the first of many in the next few weeks. I think McLaurin's going to get done. I think Micah's going to get done. I hope Jennings gets done. Of those 3, by the way, the least confident I'm in a deal getting done is Jauan. Because Micah has established the value. You just got to pay him. And Jerry eventually will. Terry McLaurin has established the value. And eventually, Washington will pay him. Jauan Jennings is a totally different situation because, like I said, early on, I heard that they were getting somewhere. And now we're hearing somewhere in the 18 to 20 million a year range. And that's not going to happen. I don't think. Could be totally wrong. So give me your thoughts. Any questions, comments, thoughts on that? Remember, you don't have to just put them here too. If you want to hit me up on the chat line, that is cool. At John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. Or if you're watching the show later, just hit me up right underneath here. Questions, comments, thoughts. Also, a place that I am often at, X. So hit me up at John Lund Radio on X. And I'm there often. Or you can go to johnlundunleashed.com and you can put comments. I got an email there that you can hit up. So I'm easy to find. So whatever. Yeah, much better. See, I respect Joey's opinion. At some point, you just got to go. Like with Tolbert, man. It was just one day, it's over. It's just time to go. And, it must suck like I said, it must suck at the age of 23 to be like, man, short end of the stick on the hair thing. But, bro, it's ready. Let's see. What's up, Mitchell and Ness? People naive as hell thinking I will be anything like he was. I doubt he's coming back. He'll come back this year. But it is. Look, people aren't realizing that it's not just an ACL, and it is a major injury. And I agree with you. I said this at the beginning because I found this out weeks ago, that this talk of week 1 was laughable. Nobody within the organization ever said that. And Kyle said probably week 6. I knew he was going to be on the PUP at least. But when he comes back, I mean, I think he can be, and that's why I think Kyle Shanahan, let me just pop up the schedule one last time. That's why I think Kyle Shanahan is really targeting like the Panthers game forward. Like, just keep your head above water in these games, and it's not a tough schedule. It's not. But if we did the win-loss game right now with given the injuries and a little bit more information of what we had, I just said 3-3 in the first 6 is what I'm thinking. I don't know how good Atlanta's going to be. It's going to hinge on Penix, but Falcons going to Falcon. Even that's a road game. I think they win 4-3, probably lose that 4-4. Giants stink at home 5-4. Going to LA 5-5, win that 6-5, 7-5, 8-5, 9-5. Look out, 10-5. That's a bad quarterback situation. They'll always lose when they're supposed to win. That could be that one, but I don't think so. 11-5, and then you got Seattle at home. So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they went 12-6, but got off to like a 4-4 start. But what Kyle is saying and what he said in the piece that I played a little bit earlier, and you can go back to the beginning of the show with Sirius Satellite, is that he's got a bunch of rookies that are young on defense, as Salah's been talking about. There's going to be growing pains. And then he's hoping, and this is just something that the Niners out last year, it didn't happen, but the Niners generally do under Kyle. They'll have some early injuries, and then they get healthy, and December hits, and he's got a great record, and all of a sudden they finish on a strong point. So I could see them getting off to like a 4-4 in their first 8, and everyone's panicking, and all of a sudden the defense starts coming together, and guys get healthy. And even if Ayuk, isn't quite himself those first 2 games, all of a sudden he starts to hit. And I could see them being a kind of a team that gets into the playoffs, that gets that final spot, could be 11-6, 10-7, finish strong as Kyle often does, and a team that probably no one wants to play in the playoffs. Do I think they're a Super Bowl contender? I don't. Do I think they're a playoff team, especially given the schedule? I do. But this early season stuff of a Jawan Jennings hold in and the injuries that are happening early, they don't have the depth. We know that. They don't have the depth on this team. They are very top heavy, and we saw that in week 1, actually. In week 1, we're going, ugh. Without the starters, ugh. They're top heavy. They don't have a lot of depth on this team. So if they have a less than average NFL injury report throughout the season, my thinking that they're going to be 10-7 or something in that range is going to go through the floor. Because they're not going to, especially offense, like defensively, I know it's going to take a minute. If they have some injuries offensively, like, and I hate to even say this, but like Trent Williams, Spencer Burford, we're seeing the lack of depth at receiver. We saw what McCaffrey meant, and we already knew that. Kittle, hello? So they don't have that kind of depth. All right. I'm not getting negative on this whole stuff. Are you talking about Ayuk there? Ayuk's just, you can't even tell with Ayuk because he's running around in sweats and stuff like that. But Jalen Hurd, that was terrible. I mean, he was a guy that, he played running back at Baylor, played receiver at Tennessee, and you're thinking this guy is going to be something. Took him in the 3rd round, the same year as Debo, and then it was just like, dude, give me an healthy. Never could get healthy. All right, let's get to it. It is time for your sweet, clean family friend, the Caboose Pistol. This is the way that we end every show. And like I said, the thing that's fun about today's show is the story's good, not great, but it's always more fun and actually funnier when news anchors have to squirm in their seat when reporting a story.
John Lund Unleashed presents the Caboose Pistol.
Wedged in the crack of her buttocks.
Somehow, someway, Lundo thinks this is the best way to leave a final impression on you for the day.
The old Caboose Pistol, everybody has one.
Did you say caboose?
I know some women who could hide a machine gun in there.
Yeah.
Leave me out of this, you weirdo. Here's John.
All right, if you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We are usually here about 7 o'clock 7 o'clock Pacific every single night, or weekdays, Monday through Friday. We still do a Saturday morning show at 10 a.m. Pacific, so tune into that. And we do Sunday nights, especially with the NFL season starts. We'll just do a full NFL recap once the regular season starts on Sunday night. So we're here 6 to 7 days a week. Please tell all your friends and enemies if you would. And this is how we end every show. So we always find the weirdest, craziest stories that we can. And while I would say that this is a relatively funny story, albeit creepy, it is always more fun when news anchors have to squirm in their seat, and that's exactly what happened here.
A Seminole County woman had quite the scare after finding a naked man in her backyard while she was feeding her baby.
This is wild. 44-year-old Robin Carr is being held in the Seminole County Jail. West 2's Paula Tristan Aruda went to the neighborhood where that man was arrested.
Okay, so just a sec. We'll continue on in a minute. I've been doing this a long time. I've done TV, radio, all these different kind of things. And I don't know. I know I'm sophomoric. You don't have to tell me, and it's fine. And I embrace it, and I actually like it. I would just start laughing. I would just right out of the gate. I'd just start laughing. If I was that first guy, like there was a naked man in her backyard, and I look over at the co-anchor, and I just start laughing. And thank God it's not two guys, because two guys would start laughing. And she's probably mature enough to handle it, but I wouldn't be, especially if it was another guy, no matter how old I was. And then we'd start laughing. Anyway, let's do it again.
A Seminole County woman had quite the scare after finding a naked man in her backyard while she was feeding her baby.
This is wild. 44-year-old Robin Carr is being held in the Seminole County Jail. West 2's Paula Tristan Aruda went to the neighborhood where that man was arrested.
It was at this intersection of Live Oak Boulevard and Sable Palm Court where Sanford police say they found two men fighting on Sunday night. They arrested one of them, who was half naked, 44-year-old Robin Carr. According to an arrest report, a woman says she was feeding her 5-month-old child in her home when she saw Carr walking in her backyard, back and forth between the living room and bedroom window. When she got a closer look, she told police he was naked and inappropriately touching himself while looking at her and her child. After she screamed, her boyfriend went after Carr, taking him to the ground at this intersection.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let's stop again. First of all, very creepy. You're in my backyard. You're naked. Where are your clothes? Why are you watching me feed my baby? That whole thing is very creepy. Very professional of the on-site news reporter to, again, not start laughing. But then let me get to this part right here. The boyfriend then, she says, if you missed it, sees the naked guy. Naked guy's running down the street. Guy tackles naked guy. I'm not tackling naked guy. Like, I'll grab the guy. I'll wait for police. I don't know. Maybe I grab his arm. I'm not going to end up on the top of a naked guy, even if I'm fully clothed. The guy's just weird. All right. So continue on. You're going to be surprised that he might have been under the influence.
Carr told police he was looking for a place to go to the bathroom and stated he would.
Okay, hold on a minute. He was looking for a place to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm sure that this has happened to you before, especially the gentleman in the crowd tonight. We can go anywhere. We can go behind a tree, like it's Dr. Seuss, right? We can pee behind a tree, like whatever. Like, and you don't have to get fully naked to do so, right? Like you can, I promise you can just pull your pants down. You can keep the rest of everything on, so you don't have to get completely naked and then walk back and forth in someone's backyard. So don't give me that you're looking for a place to go to the bathroom because you're a guy. Nature is our toilet. We can go anywhere, and you don't have to take off your pants and your clothes to do that. You weirdo.
Never do it again, and it was an accident.
Hold on a minute. He sounds like a 5-year-old here, this guy.
Carr told police he was looking for a place to go to the bathroom and stated he would never do it again, and it was an accident.
Doesn't that sound like your child? I'll never do it again, and it was an accident. Shut up. You don't get out. Okay, we'll just let you go.
Carr was taken to the hospital before he was taken to the Seminole County Jail. His bond is set at $15,000. Covering Seminole County in Sanford, Paula Tristan, West 2 News.
And a lot of you have accurately said that this is Florida. So they're pretty used to this stuff. So if it was like even California, like I don't know what it is in Florida, but like I've been doing the caboose pistol. We started doing the caboose pistol and probably like on the radio, I don't know, 2011, 2012, something like that. And we come up with stories. And if it wasn't for Florida, that was probably over 60%. I would say if I had a breakdown, let's say 50% of the stories come from Florida. And of those 50%, probably 20, 25% come from an airplane at some point. You know, something that people do on an airplane. It makes, we've talked about this a million times, like people freak out or do weird shit or whatever it is. Just airplanes freak people out. Florida freak people out. And you don't have to be watching from the Bay Area tonight, but that's where I am. And we hardly ever have stuff like that. Like I can count on one hand. We had naked Bart guy one time who was doing flips at, totally naked at Bart. I think I reported a story one time and there were naked guys at like a Starbucks and they couldn't leave. We've talked about the naked bike ride in San Francisco, but that's completely sanctioned and how weird that is. And there's weird stuff. I mean, some things happen in California, but for as big of a state as we are, most things happen in Florida, and I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is and why, but that's where probably half the stories come from. And like I said, the other 25% come in some capacity on a plane, and then there's just like a quarter of them that just come randomly from the United States and throughout the world. That's kind of what it is. 50% Florida, 25% airplanes, 25% random from anywhere. That's kind of what it is. But those people didn't even flinch. Like it's like naked guy, backyard, woman with the baby, boyfriend tackling naked guy using an excuse of a 5-year-old. I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. Whatever. And they're just like, we're used to this stuff. It happens all the time. No, cackling, no sophomore behavior. They're just like boom, 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 boom. This happens all the time. It's just weird, man. Just weird. Anyway, there you go. There's your sweet, clean family friend, the Caboose Pistol naked guy who thinks that we're going to believe that you have to get completely naked as a guy to tinkle somewhere. Don't you love the term tinkle? Anyway, there you go. I would agree with Mitchell and Ness when he says meth is a hell of a drug. It's got to be something. Like they didn't really talk about how much he had drank or how much he had smoked or how much he had snorted or how much he inhaled or how much he whatever, but it's got to be. Got to be. You know better. You've been here before, 49er diehard. We did all the 49er stuff a little bit earlier. We always finish the show with the sweet, clean family friendly Caboose Pistol. Yeah, I have attended the naked bike ride before, and it's not what you think. Well, it's probably exactly what you think. But the first time you think you're going to it, you think you're going to run into a bunch of supermodels and people that are in great shape and all this kind of stuff. The opposite is quite true. I have no idea the mentality of people who decide, well, I'm 300 pounds overweight and I'm going to do the naked bike ride. Like, that's what you see. No offense, but that's what you see. And I've already given you the story about how right after a divorce, I dated this girl, and then she, about a month in, said, I'm a nudist. Would you like to go to the nudist colony? I'm like, no, I would not. It's nice knowing you. Anyway, there you go. Sweet, clean, family, friendly Caboose Pistol. That is episode 218. Kyle talking about the wide receivers. Shanny setting us up just like Robert Saleh. It's going to be a minute, especially defensively with all this youth. One guy they'll get, if I was a betting man right now for a wide receiver and they need one, Kendrick Bourne, but I could be 100% wrong, but just something to keep an eye on. Youth will be served. Hitting on the draft. I did that for you. If you missed that, just go to the beginning of the show. Can they survive these injuries? Raiders on Thursday. We will have a full report from Vegas. NFL Blitz, the values came out on teams. The Niners are fifth at $8.6 billion. So and next time they cry about this, that, or the other in finances, shit it. James Cook signs his deal with the Bills. Still have Micah Parsons and Terry McLaurin. And for Niners fans, Juwan Jennings, that whole thing is weird. And Brock Bowers has decided, you know what? I'm 23, but it's gone. It's over. It's finished. And he's going to look good. Much better look. And then the Caboose Pistol is the Caboose Pistol. And there you go. If you missed anything tonight, you can either go to the beginning of the show. I'll put the chapters up in just moments. We'll also put up as we always do, a podcast of tonight's show, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Please, please, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. So if you're watching on X, come on over. If you're watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on Instagram, any of those places, come on over. Subscribe to John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. That would be absolutely dandy. Put those alerts on because we send out stuff throughout the day. And then, of course, 7 o'clock or so, as the case was tonight, we make sure that we have a show, 7 o'clock Pacific, and we recap what's going on with the Niners. So there you go. Anything else today? Your worst timing ever? What happened? I didn't got home to my house at college, 5 years, my house right now, and the rest of them came running by. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not understanding that. Anyway, there you go. I was on a podcast. I missed the show. It's okay, Tommy. You're here quite often, so it's okay. And I did, by the way, start with a rant on the Giants. They lost 13 of 14 at home, and there was 35,000 at the park tonight. I'm not going to tell you what to do, and you do you, and you live your life. I'm simply telling you that if a restaurant was terrible, you wouldn't go back. They don't deserve your money, but you do you. That's all I said about the Giants today. All right. That is episode 218. We'll be back with other stuff during the day tomorrow, so keep those alerts on at John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. And please, please, please tune in tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific, and we'll have a full recap of the Niners and Raiders joint practice in lovely Las Vegas. We'll do that tomorrow night at 7. Everyone else, have a wonderful, is today Wednesday? Wonderful hump day, or at least the rest of your hump day.
Thanks for hanging out with John Lund Unleashed. We'll try to be better next time, though I wouldn't hold my breath. Please like and subscribe on the John Lund Unleashed Pod YouTube channel. Watch live shows weekdays at 8 a.m. on YouTube, Instagram, and X. And make sure to have your alerts on for shows throughout the day or night. All things Lund can be found at johnlundunleashed.com. johnlundunleashed.com.
Goodbye!